Welcome, everybody, to my first time playing through the Union campaign here on Grand Tactician, the Civil War. I'm excited. Yesterday, I did kind of a first look live stream and showed a lot of the features and talked through some of those things. So I'm not going to repeat myself. If you want to see the main features of the game itself, check that video out on my channel. This one, I'm mostly just going to talk about what I'm doing in the campaign itself rather than talking about some of the features. Now, I will highlight some of the things that I haven't already covered. I'll talk through a little bit of some of what I'm doing and why. I skipped over the cutscene videos, which are fantastic, by the way. They really immerse you in what's happening. And so I'm just going to dive into this. Now, there's a couple of things. This game right now is in beta. It hasn't been released yet. Its release date for early release on Steam is August 21st, which is a couple of weeks away from now when I'm starting this campaign. And there are a few things that are available now, or that are not available now, that'll be available when it's out on early release. And when I get to those moments, I will talk about those things and let you know. But for the most part, this is a pretty finished product. As far as the game goes. So we're going to dive right in, and these newspaper headlines give you information. They're presented as newspaper headlines, but they really are telling you what's happening in the game. And right now, what we have are only what were called the Deep South, or the Cotton States, have seceded at this point in February. It's South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. So far, states like Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia are still part of the Union. They will eventually become part of the Confederacy. There's a way I can fix that map turning. I'll have to make sure I do that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to dive right into the policies. These are kind of like research, and there's only so many policies you can have used. There's 8 of them total, and these policies are going to be how we kind of determine the early flow of the game. I definitely want to focus on these militia acts, because this is how I'm going to get longer enlistment periods. Right now, once I complete this first one, when I create new units, they're going to be 3-month units. Now, that's historically what happened. The very first regiments to be raised when Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers were 3-month units. People didn't think the war was going to be very long, and so they didn't think longer enlistments were necessary. Well, eventually that changed. So we're going to try to get up to 24-month Militia Act 3, and get those 24-month enlistments as quickly as we possibly can. I'm not going to raise any units until I have that, because I'm not going to waste my time on units that aren't longer than that. So beyond that, let's go ahead and do Industrialization 1, which let's take a look and see what that does. Industrial focus allows higher subsidies to support private corporations and heavy industry, making them more profitable, increasing supply, and encouraging expansion. Industrial policies also allow new weapon and ship types to be produced in the nation's ironworks and ports. So if I want to unlock new types of weapons, you start out with certain ones. You want to be able to get some of those higher end weapons, some of those better Springfield rifles like the 1855 and the 1861. That's how we do it. We don't have direct control of the economy, because this is a capitalist system. And so you see the cost, the average price of goods. You see what's available in the markets. You see the volume of trade. You see the sales tax on those items, because whenever items are purchased, that brings money into my coffers because of sales tax and then any tariffs that happen. So we can't control, I can't increase the production of artillery if I want to. But certain policies that I put in place can affect those things. So we do have a pretty realistic effect on how the economy works. Right here we see what all those economic things are. Chicago foundries, Chicago ironworks, factories. If we capture places like the brickworks in Little Rock, Arkansas, that's going to affect things. If we do policies that affect the number of runaway slaves, like their Underground Railroad, that's going to lower the slave ratio and drive up the cost of producing goods for the Confederacy. So that's kind of how those things work. All right, so now we get to see some of what's going on with the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis has been inaugurated down in Montgomery, Alabama, which is currently the capital of the Confederacy. That got moved to Richmond after Virginia became a part of the Confederacy, which I don't believe happened until after Fort Sumter in April. He's president for 6 years. Confederacy seizing property That must be one of their policies that they're doing right now. Confederate States Army being formed. Right now, very few troops in the field on either side. No Navy whatsoever for the Confederacy. There's our current European relations. There's our national morale, our national support. We only have one objective currently. That is going to change. All right, so we've entered the next phase here. Davis calls for a militia, 12-month contracts, provisional army formed, states forming new regiments. Right now, just break Confederate morale. New policies will be available once Lincoln takes office at the beginning of March. All right, the Confederacy has already unlocked 2-year contracts. Let's go ahead and take a look at our policies. I clicked on production. It does take a little bit. You'll notice there is a bit of a lag in terms of how quickly things pop up on the screen. Let's go ahead and pause because this is a real-time strategy, so things kind of keep going until you pause it. Oh, there's the music, which I have turned off, but for some reason it keeps playing. So we've only got 3-month volunteers. Let's go ahead and get 12 months and then get the 24s. We're also going to issue letters of marque, which is going to allow for pirates, which I'm super excited about. We're going to print notes 1, and we're going to go for diplomacy 2. Diplomacy 2, let me highlight that for a second. This allows the import of Enfield musketoons. It also boosts my relations with the European superpowers. So those are important things. We want to stay on good terms with them as best we can. Now you can see additional objectives. I guess I didn't have to wait for Lincoln for those things. They appeared on March 1st. Capture Richmond, invade the Confederacy, win a major battle, maintain support above 60, which is represented basically, it means the Republican majority. There are elections, House of Representatives elections on November 4th, 1862. The Democrats are willing to consider peace with the rebels, which would be a severe blow to the Union war effort. So we need to keep that support above 60. Capture forts, 10 of them. That'll increase Union morale by 5. So you can see the effect of each of these things by hovering over them. West Virginia, if we control West Virginia, we will demoralize the CSA. Can cut the Confederacy in half means controlling the Mississippi, taking Vicksburg, Louisiana, or Vicksburg, Mississippi, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and Memphis, Tennessee. Win 3 consecutive land battles will give us a +5 morale. So you can see how all those things affect what's happening. Confederacy extends contracts to 3 years, so they've already prepared for a long war. They've passed Militia Act 3. We haven't gotten quite that far yet. We're waiting for Militia Act 2 to finish. As soon as I get that one, we're going to go to 3. We actually need Militia Act 4 to get 3-year contracts. We're not quite there yet. Looks like we're about to be. Now down here we get into Chapter 2 and we can do things like Confiscation Act, which that'll allow... You could see there, Union armies are allowed to confiscate Southern property that is needed for the war effort. Also, contraband slaves. So this is something that happened historically. When Union armies would move into certain areas, they would free the slaves and they would consider them contraband, and they would actually put them to work. They'd even put them in Union uniforms at times. So even before combat troops were raised among the freed slaves, there were the contrabands who were working in support of the war effort. Union issues letters of marque, privateering made legal, corsairs to attack trade ships. Europeans condemn the use of pirates. So I'm not going to focus real heavily on my fleets. I'm going to allow the piracy to make that happen. Fielded men is really not happening yet. We're waiting to be able to get those 2-year contracts before we do that. Lincoln has been inaugurated. It's March 4th. He is now President of the United States. You can see that there. So the bum, James Buchanan, is out and Lincoln is in. Okay, we've got our 2-year contracts. I am, let's go ahead and take a look at policies. Let's go ahead and get Militia Act 4. We'll get the 3-year contracts going. But at this point, I would like to at least start raising an army. So let's go to our military screen. And I didn't cover this yesterday, so I'll talk a little bit about this. We're going to create a new army. Now, when we create a new army, we have to choose the place where it's basically going to start. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and go for New York because it's one of the ones with the most manpower. And it looks like it's going to put Major General Charles Sanford in charge of this army, which is fine for now, but eventually we'll probably want to change that. Now, we do have corps available, so we're going to add within that corps division, and then under the division we'll add our first brigade, which we'll also make from New York. Now, looking at this state information, you can see the support of each of the states. You can see the available number of volunteers. You need about 3,000 volunteers to create a new brigade. So we have to look for places where that's available. Right now we have 30,000 volunteers available in New York. I didn't cover this yesterday in the first look. This is one of the coolest things about this game, at least to me. When you create a new brigade, first of all, you choose what it is. In this case, it's going to be an infantry brigade. It's from New York. These are volunteers, not draftees. We don't have a draft yet. Now, it looks like right now it's only a 12-month group, so maybe we want to wait on creating them. You can see the recruitment cost. You can choose what the uniforms look like. You know, there was no uniform structure as far as what people look like, at least not early in the war. It got a little better as the war got on. On the Union side, the Confederates were always kind of a hodgepodge of butternut and gray uniforms, whatever people could put together. But, you know, at the first Battle of Bull Run, you had Union units in gray, you had Confederate units in blue, you had people wearing red. But you can do that here. So I can say, okay, I want my New York brigade to look like this. I want them to have green jackets and gray pants, and you can do that. And then when you command them in the field, they're going to look like that. So I just think that's just little things like that are really cool to me. In this case, we're going to go ahead and make them look traditional, at least this one. And then you go ahead and hit that recruit button. It'll automatically start recruiting that brigade. This one's only going to take 1 day to get in the field. And it automatically assigns a commander, in this case, Joseph Mansfield. Now, let's look at him for a second, because this stuff all matters in the game. You can see when he received his various promotions. He was an Inspector General of the U.S. Army from 1853. He was in the Mexican War. He got brevet promotions to Colonel. Graduated second in the West Point class of 1822. So he's an old man by the standards of the day. You can see he's not real famous. He's insignificantly famous. He's cautious in terms of initiative. He's an inspiring leader. He's a great administrator. And he's not real cunning. You can see his focus, his kind of best focus is as an engineer. Makes this unit better in siege warfare and constructing or overcoming obstacles. You can see his current rank. He is a Mexican War veteran. He's a graduate of West Point. And then you'll be able to see the history of that unit as it develops a history. So just little things like that I just really appreciate, because they help immerse you in the game and make it feel more real, I guess you would say. So I like that a lot. Now here they've got Springfield rifle muskets. You can change those weapons based on what's available. And you can see we could give them Maynard carbines, Spencer repeating rifles, which aren't, well, I guess those aren't researched yet. Some of these can be produced, like the Enfield. Some of them can only be imported. So all of that is stuff you have to take into consideration. And then, of course, if you do choose to upgrade, you have to deal with the upgrade cost, which in this case, to upgrade to Lawrence's would be $882,000 to upgrade the entire brigade. We're not going to do that right now. So we can also rename any of our units. So we're going to go ahead and click on what is right now called the 25th Army. And we're going to rename them, not America. Got to get to the right place on this. If I could type, that would be great. So we'll call them the Army of the Potomac, even though historically that wasn't the name that this army initially had. We're going to go ahead and add a second brigade. We'll also make this one from New York, because we've got plenty of recruits available from New York right now. Let's give them a little different look. And there, so those units are going to start being raised. We're going to go ahead and move the headquarters for the Army of the Potomac down to, I guess we got to capitalize that, down to Washington, D.C. We'll go ahead and start adding a second division as well. We'll make this one from Pennsylvania. Oh, I thought I did. I guess I didn't. We got to add new. That's another brigade. We're going to add a new group is how we do that. So we'll drag this unit over to that second division. We're also going to want to recruit some artillery. So let's go ahead and recruit a new artillery unit. And again, we can change how they look. Not a lot of variety on the artillery. But we'll go for now with a couple of brigades and a battery in each of the divisions, I think. Okay, so now we've got the Army of the Potomac here. And you can see all these circles represent all the different units that are being formed, the divisions. We're going to go ahead and take the Army of the Potomac headquarters and put it in Alexandria, Virginia. So we'll go ahead and issue them their orders to move, and they can do that by rail, sea, or river, whatever they find to be the most convenient way of doing that. You can limit those by deselecting those things, but for now, I want them to take whatever's available to them. It's a relatively small army at the moment anyway, but we'll go ahead and get them transported. You can see they're being transported right now, and they're going to use the rail to do that, or river, or sea, whatever is most convenient for them. I want to give a shout out and a thanks to my friend, the Historical Gamer. You guys should go over and subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. He's the one who reached out to me yesterday and let me know that he had connected with the developers to find out how to fix that. You noticed before where when I would move, sometimes the map would start flipping around, and there's a real simple fix. So you can go in and fix that. So he reached out and let me know how to do that. So thank you, sir, for that. Make sure you guys check out his channel. A lot of great content. If you like my channel, you will probably like his channel. It's much the same kind of stuff. And he is very much like me. He really knows his stuff. He knows history, and he talks about that. So check him out. All right, we've passed the Confiscation Act on March 15th, which means contraband slaves will not be returned to owners, and Confederate support increases in the South. So that's the, all of these decisions we make have a positive and a negative, and you kind of have to balance those things. It increases support in the South for the Confederacy, but it's also going to drop their level of slave production ability, which is going to hurt their economy. So I think that's a trade that's worth it right now. We're working on building our first Western Army, which we'll call the Army of the Ohio. I'm a pretty traditional guy, so I don't want to mess things up too much compared to what they were historically. So we're building an Ohio division and an Illinois division. I'm not going to build too much more than that for now. Now, these are our first 36-month troops. Most of the Army of the Potomac right now is only 1-year troops, so we're going to have to replace those pretty quickly. But we'll start getting those into the field, and I'm going to go ahead and I think place that headquarters. Let's go back and select that unit again. And it does automatically, it seems, make the commander of a new army a lieutenant general, which I'm not crazy about that since that wasn't something that happened historically, but I'm not going to throw too big of a fit over that. So right now that headquarters is in Cincinnati. I actually want to move them all the way over here, and we're going to actually set them up in Paducah, Kentucky as kind of our launching off point. And then we're going to build a supply depot here, I think. Actually, we probably don't need to because this is, and Paducah's spelled wrong, but they'll probably get that fixed. This is a place from which supplies can flow. So we don't really need a supply depot there, I don't think. Now you see here that the Union has issued $10,000 bonds. The reason for the issuance of bonds is when we go in the negative in terms of our finances. And because I'm producing an army, you can see that our finances are dropping off. The Confederates just put King Cotton II policy. Plantations receiving more government support. Cotton to replace iron in worship? No, I don't think so. Europeans cheer as cotton flows. More slave workforce needed. So because my revenues are not covering my expenses, and you can see why, army upkeep and new recruitment, that has created a negative in the surplus, which means we're going to drive up the national debt, which is right now at $65 million. So we got to keep an eye on that, keep an eye on the interest rate. The better our credit rating, the lower the interest rate. And so obviously we don't want to bankrupt the country. Now here in the subsidies, this is where we can impact the economy. And we've got these sliders. We can spend money on diplomacy, spend it on subsidizing industry, on agriculture, transportation. The higher it is in transportation, the more available transportation we'll have. Civil order, that's only if we're dealing with riots like over the draft, things like that. Recruitment, trade war. So the higher the politics policy is, the more policies we can have. So that's all a part of things. And you can see here we can compare our policies and our balance to the Confederacy. So I've issued an order for my Army of the Ohio to switch to a defensive stance. And you can see the First Corps is actually still stationed in Cincinnati. We're going to have to get them moved. But the order is taking several days to reach them. Because, well, they're sending an order to Cincinnati from Paducah, Kentucky. Now, if I were to build telegraph lines, which will be something important that I want to do later in the war, that'll greatly increase how quickly those orders travel and how quickly I'm able to make changes. I love the fact that there's a delay in orders, and that happens on the battlefield as well, because that's much more realistic than just being able to control things and making them happen right away. I haven't yet taken a look at the artillery, so let's go ahead and take a look at this new artillery battalion from Connecticut that I'm currently raising. They're raising that battalion with 12-pounder Napoleons, but we have other available weapons. Obviously, those are smoothbores, so they're going to be better at close range. But you can see the rate of fire, the effective range, the cost of upgrading those units. We've got some 10-pounder Parrots, 12-pounder Whitworth rifles, which aren't yet researched. We've got 20-pounder Parrots available. Obviously, the rate of fire is lower on that, but it's a rifled gun. So you can kind of see, I mean, I think we're going to stick with the Napoleons for now, but you can see the other possibilities that are there. Let's take a look at our policies, because I want to see what else might be available. We could actually go for Emancipation Proclamation now. I'm not sure we want to do that this soon. You can see here, it'll greatly reduce the possibility of European intervention, but it will declare all slaves in the Confederate States free. It is such a drastic act that the Southern resolve will increase immensely, and hence should be carefully considered. But once in effect, it'll prove the Union cause is just, and support of the war effort in the Union will soar. So we're only going to do that if we absolutely feel like we have to. Same thing here with the U.S. colored troops, which is something that's possible for us to go for. Let's see how that's impacted. It'll increase the available recruits, and 3 U.S. colored troop brigades are added to the Union armies immediately. The use of black soldiers against Southerners will infuriate them and consolidate their morale and resolve. We don't want to increase their morale, because that's what we're trying to actually reduce. Let's go for legal blockade. Passing an act proclaiming the Union blockade of the South is legal, and any attempts to breach it are hostile acts and will be retaliated. This will discourage European trade fleets from helping the Confederate blockade runners, but at the same time infuriate European leadership, feeling their neutral status threatened. Further trade war subsidies are allowed, and European relations are worsened. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and do the blockade. I'm not entirely sure what's happening here. The morale of my armies is at 43. So I've got to take a look and see what the problem is with my armies. I also have only 26 loyal states compared to 13 for the Confederacy, which tells me that right now it seems like Kentucky and maybe Missouri or Maryland are kind of not real friendly to me at the moment. So I'm not entirely sure what that's about, but we're going to have to keep an eye on those types of things. Maybe that's why the Confederacy hasn't really raised an army yet, because it's too early. You can see my morale of my armies is all the way down to 40, and the number of men fielded has been going down. So I feel like maybe I just tried to raise an army a little too early. I'm not sure what's going on. These are the kinds of things you have to figure out when playing a new game like this, is to figure out exactly what's going on. Supplies are only at 45% for the First Corps. That might have something to do with it. We've got an army in the field in April of 1861, and it just seems like they're not really happy about what's happening. Let's see. Attrition. High sickness and desertion, which is hurting things. The weather isn't helping either. So let's see what we can do about that. Maybe if we build a fort. I don't know if that would help. Let's take a look at construction. We'll build a fort. I guess it's not going to let me, probably because this is Confederate territory. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things in the leadership screen here. You can see here Brigadier General James Shields, who is my first corps commander in the Army of the Potomac. You can see he's politically assigned, and that's important. He acquired his rank thanks to his political status. Commanding troops increases support in his home state, but he's apt to feuds. If removed from command, it will hurt the support in his state. Politically assigned generals, when you remove them from command, that hurts the support from their state. So, if a guy's from Ohio and we remove him, that's a problem. So take a look at this. Brigadier General James Shields looking at his history, a U.S. Senator who represented Illinois and Minnesota between 1849 and 1859, a veteran of the Mexican and Seminole Wars. In 1842, he challenged Abraham Lincoln to a duel, but before fighting, they made peace and became friends. He was a brigadier general all the way back to 1846. So high leadership, high initiative, a little bit of fame, not very cunning. But you can learn those things about every one of these. There's Joseph Hooker right there. And again, he's a West Point graduate. He's a veteran, so a little different there. And I just love the fact that you can read these histories of the units and learn a little bit about them. I can't figure out why such a high number of my men are currently sick and unable for duty. I can't see any reason why. I've moved the 1st Corps back into Washington, D.C. I'm hoping that'll help with that. But I don't really see this disabled number going down any. So I'm not entirely sure what that's about. Maybe it's the low supplies, and I don't know what I can do to fix that. But I guess that's the kind of thing you have to learn as life goes on. So here's some good news. The British declare neutrality, Royal Navy to avoid American ports, any blockades to be monitored by Admiral Milne, the Admiralty to reinforce Milne, 4,300 regular British troops in Canada. So they're observing the Civil War. I still can't figure out the issue with the armies. I don't know if it's because we're not, I guess, technically at war yet because they haven't fired on Fort Sumter, that maybe that's why I just can't have armies in the field. So I've pretty much had to disband the entire Army of the Potomac. There's very little of it left. I have a few units left out in the west, but I've disbanded that whole army, at least until I can figure out what's going on, why I can't get it supplied. All right, so for the sake of moving the story along, rather than slug through the early parts of 1861 where not a lot is happening right now, I've decided to jump into an 1862 campaign. Now that you've kind of seen all of the overview of how things get started, how you build an army, how you implement policies, now we're going to get into the action. So 1862, this is the situation as it historically was. We've got the Army of the Potomac with 98,000 men. Based out of D.C., we've got the Army of the Southwest. Way out in the west, in the southwest corner of Missouri, we've got Buell's Army of Mississippi. It's Pope's Army of the Mississippi. We have Grant's Army of the Tennessee right here with 40,000 men. And then we have Don Carlos Buell with the Army of the Ohio over here in Nashville. So we're going to go ahead and kind of follow the historic path here. And we're going to start by ordering Grant with the Army of Mississippi to move into western Tennessee. We're going to start bringing Buell's Army of the Ohio to do the same, and we'll start by moving them down toward Waynesboro here. So we'll get both of those things going. While we're doing that, where was Pope's army anyway? I want to see where Pope's army is because I think I'm going to go ahead and get him moving as well. So that's the Army of the Mississippi, and they're up here in Cairo, Illinois. So we're going to move them down to kind of deal with Stewart's division right here. Now, the way combat works is if it's a skirmish, in other words, just kind of a small dust-up between two battling forces, that'll auto-resolve. If it's a major army battle between two armies, it'll give me the option to actually fight that tactically on the map. So that's kind of how that works. It's going to take a little time for these orders to be received and implemented. And meanwhile, we're going to go ahead with the Army of the Potomac, and we're going to move them toward the Army of Virginia here in Northern Virginia. So let's go ahead and do that as well. All right, McClellan, you going to actually move or what? Let's see what happens with him, whether or not he actually moves. All right, so since this was a minor battle, you can see here we got to receive a message from John Pope, the Army of the Mississippi, and it's telling us that he actually captured that division that was there at the Fort Thompson garrison. So it's showing his Battle of Manassas. Now, I mentioned earlier that I would talk about this. One of the things in the beta of the game is that they don't yet have battlefields available. So everything, when a battle happens, it actually takes place on a battlefield map, an existing battlefield map, Manassas, Antietam, Gettysburg. So it's going to give those names. That's not going to be the case when we get into early release on August 21st. It'll actually make real battles in the real locations. So that's just kind of a beta feature of the game that is happening right now. It won't be that way when you guys have access to this game. But it looks like so far all of the movements that I've made have gone really well. Casualties about 200 men or so in each of these battles. Well, the French have invaded Mexico. It's March 6th of 1862. That doesn't affect us too much, I don't think. Glorious victory at Shiloh. Again, it's going to just use the existing things that are happening. And the Confederacy retreated in panic. Again, that's why we're not actually engaging in battle. The enemy suffered 4,000 casualties, 0 killed, and 4,000 captured. We lost 1,148 men. So now that we've driven them off from Shiloh, we're going to go ahead and move Grant and Buell toward Corinth. Hopefully we'll get them fairly synced in to make that happen. So Grant's going to pursue that first corps that he drove off, but I know we're going to face a major battle here when we hit the Army of Mississippi. And it looks like we're going to have them get there fairly close to the same time. Grant's going by rail. And now we get a chance to actually fight a battle. So auto-resolve, retreat, or assault. Let's go ahead and assault. And we're going to fight ourselves our first battle on the campaign map, on a actual tactical battle phase. So as I mentioned, right now in the beta, all of these battles are going to be fought on real historic battlefields rather than on just randomly generated places. So we get to deploy our forces. You can see our army will vigorously attack the enemy in the region of Mississippi. We're facing the Army of Mississippi under command of Albert Sidney Johnston with 14,000 men, 62 guns. The enemy army is green and the morale is reported to be confident. Reports indicate their supply situation is outstanding. The supply state of our army is outstanding. Now let's take a look and see exactly what our strength is. We've got 56,000 men available because we've got not only our army but the army under Don Carlos Buell. You can see there, Army of the Tennessee, Army of the Ohio, combined forces are going to just absolutely overwhelm the Confederates. But this gives us a chance to see the actual tactical battlefield in action. So let's go ahead now. You can see here, since we have two separate armies coming in, we've got two different places that we actually get to deploy our troops. And anywhere within this circle is where we can actually deploy our armies. So let's go ahead and grab, let's see, these are the different divisions. We've got McCook. So let's grab McCook's division if we can. And we're just going to deploy the whole division somewhere out here. We're just going to throw these divisions out here and get everything deployed. And then we'll get a chance to see some combat action here. And it should be a relatively easy victory for us. Here's Buell. We can actually just give him an entire army order like this. And then if we want to, we can spread out the individual divisions and get them into a better formation. So it'll look something like that. I don't know where the enemy is, But then we'll get Grant's army up here, which is significantly larger. All right, so we've ended the deployment phase, and we're going to start getting our armies into action now. You can see the area we're actually able to see. Now we have these objectives on the battlefield, so we're going to go start taking those objectives. And I think we'll start by just moving down south toward Pittsburgh Landing. And we can actually tell our generals to move at a certain signal, move at a certain time. I'm actually not going to worry about that. I'm just going to go ahead and start issuing those orders to move forward. Polk arrives. My scouts have brought the most probable reports of troops from a corps belonging to Polk joining the battle. Their numbers are reportedly 6,000 infantry, 500 cavalry with 15 guns. So it looks like he's going to have a little bit more than we initially thought that he would. Now, each of my units, I can give orders to them. So you can see here, infantry, we can tell them to be skirmishers, we can tell them to lay down. The artillery, same thing. Our commander, we can give him initiative, which means what he's going to do is he will use his best judgment if an opportunity arises to hit the enemy. So we're going to move Sherman down. We'll have him go about there. These other two divisions I'm keeping kind of in the rear. And then we're going to start moving. I think we'll put Crittenden up to here. And I'm going to keep the others kind of where they are for now. We'll start probing forward a little bit, looking for the enemy. We do have an objective right there that we can take. All right, looks like we're about to make our first contact with the enemy. As we can see, looks like Patrick Claiborne coming down the road. And it's going to be the forces here at Bark Road that are going to make first contact with the enemy forces. So hopefully we're in good position to be able to take them on. James Garfield, future president. His division may be the first one to fight. Need to move these guys up a little bit. This 19th Brigade. Oh, I see why they're back. No, maybe not. I thought maybe we had some artillery up here. These guys got Springfield muskets. They're not even rifles. That's probably not ideal. All right, let's move Garfield's brigade up into position. We're going to bring the 19th Brigade under Hazen down. Yeah, there was no way those Confederates were going to take on that many brigades and survive well. But there's a whole, actually several divisions in behind them, so let's go ahead and bring McCook down to engage. We're going to bring Crittenden down as well. We'll pull him in right in between those two. And we're definitely going to have to start bringing down Grant's army. That's the bulk of our force. So let's go ahead and give them some orders to get down here. I think that'll do for now. And then we're going to need these two divisions to kind of just hang on for the time being. Nicely done, boys. So what's this about here? Let's see what these different things mean. First battle experience. They're suffering from flanking fire. Where at? I don't see any. Come on, Garfield. Rally these guys. They have poor training. We've lost 47 men so far. So you can see this in the headquarters if we take a look at our reports. We can look at our strength, our combat report here, but here's our strength report. You can see so far the Army of the Ohio suffered 11 killed, 66 wounded, 5 missing. I think there's a way, if we look in the combat report, to actually see how many casualties they've inflicted. 76. So there you have it. So it appears Garfield's brigade panicked in their first combat experience, and they're running. So Wood has lost half his division, but we also shattered Claiborne, so that's good news. And we're bringing down plenty of reinforcements. I'm not too particular about the strategy for this battle because I know we've got such overwhelming numbers. I'm just going to build a strong battle line down here in this area, and I think that ought to be enough to push the Confederates off the field. Let's see what the dispatch says. Here we go. So that was Garfield when he told us he was first in contact with the enemy. All right, so we've actually spotted some Confederate units up here as well. So we're actually going to need McClernand's division to turn himself around and deal with that threat. I don't really see anybody else on the battlefield, so he's largely contained down in this area down here, I would guess. Here comes Sherman with his division. We'll get them right down here in this field here. And I've held a division back here just in case. Oh, that's Grant. I didn't want to issue orders to the whole army. It's going to take some time to get used to how this system works. It's actually really easy, but sometimes you just have to pay a little bit closer attention to what's happening. And now that I've got McCook's division getting into position, I think we're going to go ahead and press things on this cavalry that's down here. Looks like we've still got some Confederates just out of range. So we'll go ahead and push the 21st Brigade forward and deal with them. Got quite a few brigades here. Let's go ahead and push down. Come on, Wagner. You guys got this. Let's zoom out and see the tactical situation a little better. Those appear to be the only Confederates we're currently in contact with. That's Nathan Bedford Forrest back here with his cavalry. We're going to run into them in just a second here. All right, those Confederates have fallen back. Let's push the advantage. See what Forrest does. Forrest is dismounting. He's going to fight. Good. So we'll keep pushing this. Still haven't really found the majority of the Confederate army. He's got to be back behind Forrest somewhere. There's no way he survives this. All right, boys, get reloaded. Light him up. This is going to go so bad for him. I can't believe he's even staying. You can see up here, it tells you kind of overall how the battle's going. It's still saying indecisive, but it's leaning in my favor. Who do we have here? That's Hurlbut's division. We're going to bring him up. Let's bring him up over here on this side. We're still waiting for a lot of Grant's army to get into place. I'm honestly surprised Nathan Bedford Forrest's troops have lasted this long. Thinking maybe we'll charge into him. Oh no, he's getting out of dodge, I think. Yeah, he just mounted up. He's getting out of there with what he's got left. Honestly, that's about the only contact I'm making with the enemy right now. All right, we're starting to run into some more of the Confederate infantry now. So we're going to let these divisions, they'll get into line and do their thing. I'm on kind of a fast sim time here, but they'll take initiative and they'll start getting into battle line. There's the 1st Brigade. They've got some Zouaves there under Morgan Smith. And we're getting close to evening now, as you can see. It's actually about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And since this is only March, the sun's going to go down fairly early. So we got to get these guys into position. All right, so darkness has fallen and fighting ceases for the day. Prepare for the next day's fighting or attempt to retreat using the cover of darkness. During the night, your army was resupplied. Inspect the situation of your troops. Click Continue to start redeployment. So anytime the battle happens over multiple days, you get the opportunity to do this, to resupply, to get, if your troops don't have enough ammunition, you can do that. So let's go ahead and hit Continue here and see what we can do as far as redeployment goes. Yeah, there we go. So we can get everybody in line and ready for the second day's battle. I'm actually going to stop right there. There's a lot going on, and I'm still figuring my way through everything. So in the middle of this battle, we'll stop for this first episode, give you a chance to kind of digest this content. I'm going to go and continue to play the game on my own because I want to get better and better at it, learn how everything works so I can better present it to you. As I'm figuring all of this out, since it's a brand new game that just came out yesterday. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Drop a like if you would, and we will see you again every single day with this campaign until it's finished. Thanks for watching.